Story number 1. I have been a forensic morgue technician for 13 years. I have processed over 2,000 bodies. I know what death looks like, what it smells like, what it feels like under my gloved hands. I know the color of skin at 48 hours, the texture of tissue at 72 hours, the specific stillness that has no equivalent anywhere in the living world. I know death better than I know most people who are still alive. So when I tell you that the body on my table on a Thursday night in November had been dead for 7 days according to every piece of documentation in its file, and that when I placed my hand on its chest it was warm, not room temperature, not residual, genuinely, humanly warm, I need you to understand that I am not someone who makes mistakes about this. I need you to understand that what happened next in that room changed the way I move through the world permanently. The intake report is thorough. Male, 54 years old, found in his apartment by a neighbor who noticed the smell. Police estimated time of death at 7 to 8 days prior based on decomposition state at scene. The county medical examiner did a preliminary at the apartment and confirmed the estimate. The body arrives at our facility at 11:40 p.m., bagged, tagged, documented. I am the receiving technician. I sign for it. I log it. I move it to table 3 and I begin my intake procedure. The first thing I notice is the bag. Sealed bags from a scene like this, a week-old decomp in a closed apartment in November, have a specific internal atmosphere when you open them. The smell is one thing, and yes, the smell is present, but the atmosphere, the temperature inside the bag is always cold or neutral. Heat dissipates. A body that has been dead for 7 days in an unheated apartment, then transported in a refrigerated vehicle, does not retain heat. There is no physiological mechanism by which it does. I open the bag and warmth comes out. I stop moving. I stand completely still the way you do when your body registers something wrong before your brain has fully caught up. I tell myself it is the transport, some anomaly, some equipment malfunction in the vehicle. I reach in and I place 2 fingers on the side of the neck the way you do not do it for a pulse but the way you do it to assess tissue temperature, and what I feel stops my internal monologue completely. It is warm, not faintly warm. Warm the way a person is warm when they are alive and their blood is moving and their body is doing the 10,000 invisible things bodies do to maintain themselves. I pull my hand back. I look at the paperwork again. John Alderman. Dead 7 to 8 days. I look at John Alderman, and I proceed with my intake because I am a professional and because the alternative, standing in the morgue at midnight having a crisis about a warm body, is not something I am willing to do. I take my temperature probe. Standard procedure. I record the reading and then I look at it and I set the probe down and I pick it up and I do it again. 96.1 degrees Fahrenheit. A living human body runs at 98.6. A body dead for 7 days in the conditions described in this file should be reading somewhere between 40 and 50 degrees, having long since equalized with its environment. 96.1 is not a malfunctioning probe. I get a second probe. 96.3. I call my supervisor, Dr. Reinhold, at home. It is 12:20 a.m. She does not appreciate the call, but she hears my voice and she asks me to read her the temperature twice, and then she is quiet for a moment and she says she is coming in. While I wait, I continue my documentation because stopping feels worse than continuing. I am measuring, photographing, logging. The decomposition markers present on the body are consistent with the 7-day estimate. The skin discoloration, the early stage tissue breakdown, the specific changes to the facial features, all of it reads as a week-old death. Everything except the temperature. Everything except the warmth that I can feel through my gloves when I make contact with the torso. A warmth that is not diminishing, that is not equalizing with the cold room around it, that is simply maintaining steady, as if something inside this body is still working. Dr. Reinhold arrives at 12:55 a.m. She does not say anything when she walks in. She goes directly to the table, puts her hand on the body, and removes it immediately. She picks up my temperature log. She reads it. She sets it down. She goes to the corner of the room and stands there for approximately 30 seconds doing nothing. And I have worked with this woman for 9 years and I have never seen her need 30 seconds to collect herself. She orders a full secondary workup. Blood draw, tissue samples, full organ assessment. Everything. We work through the night. At 3 a.m. she takes me aside and tells me what the blood work is showing, and I make her repeat it because the first time I think I have misheard her. The blood is oxygenated. Not fully, not normally, but there is oxygen present in this blood in a quantity that is not consistent with death, not consistent with 7 days of cellular breakdown, not consistent with anything in the medical literature she or I have ever encountered. At 4:17 a.m. something happens that I have told very few people about because the ones I told looked at me in a way that made me stop telling it. I am on the far side of the table completing a tissue sample when I see, in my peripheral vision, the chest of John Alderman move. Not a settling. Not a gas release, which is a thing that happens and which I know the difference. A rise. A single, slow rise of the chest cavity consistent with one thing and one thing only. I grab the edge of the table. I look directly at the chest. It is still. Dr. Reinhold is across the room with her back to me. I stand there for a very long time looking at that chest, and I do not look away again for the rest of the night. The official report filed on John Alderman lists cause of death as cardiac failure, time of death consistent with original estimate, and notes a temperature recording anomaly attributed to equipment malfunction, and a note requesting calibration review of morgue instruments. I was asked to sign that report. I signed it because Dr. Reinhold asked me to, and because she looked at me when she asked in a way that told me signing was the only reasonable path forward for both of us. John Alderman was buried 8 days later. I know which cemetery. I know which plot. I have driven past it twice since then, and both times I have kept my eyes on the road, and both times I have driven considerably faster past that particular section of ground than the speed limit technically allows. Because I signed a report that I know is not accurate. Because I know what I saw that night and what I felt. And because the single question that I cannot stop returning to, the one that wakes me at 3 a.m. on the nights when I actually sleep, is not what was keeping that body warm. It is whether whatever was keeping it warm was still doing so when they put him in the ground. And whether in the dark of that box, in the silence under 6 feet of earth, it is warm in there still. I still work the night shift. I still process intake. Every single time I open a body bag, I pause for just a second before I reach in. Just a second. Just long enough to prepare myself for what I might feel. And every single time so far, that pause has been unnecessary. So far. Story number 2. There are 218 miles of active subway tunnel running beneath this city. I have personally inspected most of them over my 11 years on the night inspection crew. I know every maintenance alcove, every drainage channel, every section of wall that has been patched and repatched over 100 years of operation. I know which tunnels have the bad air pockets and which ones flood in heavy rain, and which sections of track have the micro vibrations that tell you the concrete beneath is starting to hollow. I know these tunnels the way some people know their own homes, which is why when I tell you that in Tunnel 4B at the 2.3 mile marker, there is a door that appears on absolutely no blueprint, no historical record, no engineering document in the entire archive of this transit system, you understand that I am not someone who gets confused about what belongs underground and what does not. I find it on a routine inspection run in March. Tunnel 4B is a secondary line, lower passenger volume, runs northeast under the older part of the city. It is one of the original tunnels, construction dating to 1911, and the walls have that specific quality of old brick and old concrete that you only get in infrastructure that has been breathing underground air for over a century. I have run this tunnel dozens of times. The 2.3 mile marker is a section I have passed without incident on every single one of those runs. On this particular night, I am alone, which is standard for a secondary tunnel inspection, running the service walkway with my light and my clipboard and my audio recorder, which we use for continuous logging. I am at the 2.3 marker and I am about to make my standard notation when my light catches something in the wall to my left that my brain initially refuses to process as what it is. It is a door. Full-size, wooden, set into the brick wall of the tunnel with a frame around it as if it was always meant to be there. Old wood, dark with age and moisture, iron handle, no visible lock. Not a maintenance hatch, not an equipment panel. A door, a real door, standing in a subway tunnel wall 2.3 miles underground where no door should exist and where no door has ever existed in any document I have ever reviewed. I stop walking. I stand there and I shine my light on it for a long time, maybe 2 full minutes just looking at it. My audio recorder is still running and I make a notation into it. Calm voice, professional, door observed at 2.3 mile marker tunnel 4B. Not on schematic, appears structural, will report for review. I note the dimensions, the material, the approximate age of the wood based on its appearance. I do not touch it. I do not try the handle. I am alone 2 miles underground and whatever is on the other side of a door that should not exist is not something I am prepared to encounter without backup. I finish my inspection run. I file my report the following morning. I attach my audio recording. I submit photographs I took with my inspection camera. I note it as a priority discrepancy requiring immediate architectural review and flag it for the senior engineering team. 3 days later, my supervisor, a man named Carver who has been running tunnel operations for 26 years, calls me into his office and closes the door, which he has never done in the 11 years I have worked under him. He sits across from me and he puts my report on the desk between us and he looks at me for a long moment before he speaks. And what he says is not what I expect. He does not ask me to describe what I saw in more detail. He does not tell me the engineering team will investigate. He does not express surprise. He says, "I need you to remove this from the system and not mention it again." I ask him what he means. He says the notation in my report, the photographs, the audio file, all of it needs to be pulled from the record and I need to not raise this again in any internal communication. I ask him why. He looks at me for another long moment and then he says, "Because the last 2 people who reported it are not working here anymore." He says it without any particular weight. Matter of fact. The way you say something you have said before and wish you didn't have to say again. I ask him what happened to them. He says one of them retired early. He says the other one, and here he pauses and looks at the desk, had an incident in the tunnel. He does not tell me what kind of incident. I ask and he does not answer, and the way he does not answer is more information than an answer would have been. I pull the report. I delete the audio notation from the system log. The photographs never made it to the main server, so there is nothing to pull there. But I have copies on my personal device that I did not mention to Carver and which I still have. I go back to Tunnel 4B 6 weeks later. I tell myself it is a routine run. It is not a routine run. I am at the 2.3 mile marker and the door is still there, unchanged, same dark wood, same iron handle, same impossible presence in a wall that the original 1911 construction plans show as solid brick all the way through with no cavity behind it. And this time I am not alone. I have a junior technician named Reyes with me, and Reyes sees it before I can redirect him and he stops and looks at it and turns to me and says, "What is that?" And I say, "Maintenance access, old system, nothing current." And I keep walking and after a moment he follows. But here is what I did not tell Reyes. Here is the part of that second visit that I have told no one until now. When I passed the door on that second visit, close enough to touch it, I heard something from the other side. Not machinery. Not water, though there is always water moving somewhere underground. Not the ambient noise of the tunnel. Something else. Something that I stood there and listened to for approximately 10 seconds before I made the decision to keep walking. And that decision, the decision to keep walking, is something I revisit in my mind regularly because I do not know if it was the right one. It was breathing. Slow, steady, patient breathing from directly behind the door. Something standing right at the door, right on the other side of that old dark wood, breathing in the way something breathes when it is simply waiting. There are 218 miles of tunnel under the city. I inspect them alone at night. Carver retired last year and his replacement does not know about Tunnel 4B and I have not told him. The door is still there. I know because I check it every time I run that section, and I check it because something worse than knowing it is there would be going back one night and finding it gone. Finding that whatever was behind it found another way out. Every time I pass that door I listen. I have not heard the breathing again. I do not know if that means it has stopped or if it means it has simply moved away from the door. Moved somewhere further back in whatever space exists behind a door that opens into a wall that all available records insist is solid. And every single night that I run Tunnel 4B, I think about the technician who had an incident. The one Carver wouldn't explain. And I wonder if that person got too close, or if they did what I have never done, what I tell myself I will never do, what I think about every single time I pass that iron handle in the dark. I wonder if they opened it. Story number 3. I want to start by telling you that I am a practical man. I took the lighthouse keeper position on the Carrow Point station because I wanted solitude and I wanted the coast, and I was very clear-eyed about what the job involved, which is maintaining the light, logging weather and maritime data, and spending a significant amount of time alone on a rock 12 miles from the nearest town. I am not someone who looks for mystery. I am not someone who dramatizes the ordinary strangeness of living alone above the ocean. So when I tell you that every single night for the past 11 months, without one single exception, at 2 a.m. exactly, a boat with no lights and no crew has drifted past the station on the same heading, at the same speed, in the same position relative to the rocks, I am telling you something I have checked and logged and attempted to explain by every rational means available to me. And I am telling you now because 3 weeks ago the boat changed what it does, and I am no longer comfortable keeping this to myself. The first time I see it, I am not even certain of what I am looking at. It is my 4th week at the station. I am awake at 2 a.m. because the weather data requires a 2 a.m. log entry, and I am still adjusting to the schedule. I am at the seaward window with my logbook and my coffee, and I look out at the water the way you do when you are near the ocean at night, not looking for anything specifically, just the deep human habit of watching moving water, and I see a shape in the beam of the light. A vessel. Medium size, maybe 40 feet, the kind of deep water sailing boat that serious ocean sailors use. Moving steadily north to northeast. No running lights, which is a maritime violation and which immediately gets my attention because a boat with no running lights in these waters at night is a Coast Guard matter. I get my binoculars and I get to the window in time to hold it in the beam for about 30 seconds before it passes out of range. In those 30 seconds, I look for crew. I look for any sign of human presence on that deck. There is none. The cockpit is empty. The deck is empty. The boat is moving under what appears to be minimal sail, enough to maintain headway, but there is no one at the helm. No one adjusting the sail. No one on watch. The boat is simply moving, alone, north to northeast, in the dark without lights. I file a report with the Coast Guard. I log it in my station record. The Coast Guard acknowledges my report, notes the coordinates, and tells me they will look into it. I hear nothing further. The next night, at 2 a.m., the boat passes again. Same heading, same speed, same position relative to the station. No lights, no crew. I call the Coast Guard immediately this time while it is still in the beam, and I describe what I am seeing in real time, and I give them the heading and the position, and they dispatch a patrol. The patrol reaches the area in approximately 22 minutes. They find nothing. No vessel. No debris. Nothing. I log it and say nothing to anyone beyond the official record because I am new to this posting and I do not want to be known as the keeper who sees things. By the end of the first month, it has happened 31 times and I have stopped calling the Coast Guard because the conversations have begun to take on a quality I do not like, a quality of patience extended towards someone who is becoming a nuisance, and because the patrol they sent 3 times found nothing all 3 times, always arriving just long enough after the sighting that the boat, whatever the boat is, was gone. I start keeping a separate log. Private, in a notebook I keep in my quarters. Date, time, duration in the beam, Heading, apparent speed, any variation from previous nights. For the first 4 months, there is no variation. The boat is a fixed event, as reliable as the tide, as regular as a schedule, appearing at 2 a.m. and passing northward and disappearing into the dark beyond the beam range every single night without deviation. I begin to research the history of the station. Old keeper logs, Coast Guard archives, maritime records. Carrow Point has been an active lighthouse since 1887, and the records go back almost that far. And in those records, I find something that I sit with for a long time before I decide how to feel about it. In the log of the keeper who held this posting from 1931 to 1948, a man named Aldous Fenn, there are 17 references to an unlit vessel observed passing the station on a northward heading in the early morning hours. Fenn describes it in the careful, unemotional language of a practical man doing his job. Same heading each time. No crew observed. No response to signal lamp. He reports it to the maritime authority of his day, and the records show the same outcome I have experienced. Patrol finds nothing. Fenn's final log entry is dated September 14, 1948. It is 2 sentences. Says, "The boat came to the rocks tonight. I am going to see who is aboard." There is no entry after that. Fenn was reported missing on September 15, 1948. His body was never recovered. The official record lists the cause as accidental, a keeper lost to the sea, which was not uncommon in that era. The posting sat empty for 2 years before the next keeper took it. I read Fenn's final entry on a Wednesday afternoon in good daylight with a cup of tea, and I feel the specific cold that has nothing to do with temperature. For 7 more months, I watch the boat pass and I do not go to the rocks. I tell myself this is rationality. I tell myself this is the lesson of Aldous Fenn's 2 sentences. 3 weeks ago, on a Thursday at 2 a.m., the boat did not pass. I am at the window at 2, as I always am, and 2 becomes 2:15 and 2:15 becomes 2:30 and the water in the beam is empty. I tell myself variation, anomaly, 1 deviation in 11 months. I go to my bunk at 3 a.m. I do not sleep. At 4:40 a.m., I hear something on the exterior walkway that circles the lamp room at the top of the lighthouse. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, walking the full circuit of the walkway. I lie in my bunk and I listen to them go all the way around once. Twice. On the 3rd circuit, they stop directly above my quarters and they do not continue. In the morning, there is nothing on the walkway. No marks, no disturbance. The access hatch that leads to the walkway from inside is bolted from the interior and the bolt was undisturbed. There is no external way to reach that walkway from the ground or the water without going through the interior of the lighthouse. The boat passed at 2 a.m. the following night. Back to normal. Back to its heading, its speed, its empty deck and its dark running lines and its absolute indifference to the beam sweeping across it. I watched it pass and I felt something that I am embarrassed to write in my official log, but that I will tell you directly. I felt relieved, because whatever had decided to leave its boat that one night and come to the rocks and climb to my walkway and circle above my sleeping quarters 3 times had, apparently, gone back. Had chosen to return to the water. But I keep thinking about what Fenn wrote. I am going to see who is aboard. And I keep thinking that maybe Fenn did not fall into the sea. Maybe Fenn went to the rocks and the boat was there, and maybe he did see who was aboard. And maybe whatever is on that boat, whatever has been passing this point every night for longer than I have been alive, took one look at Aldous Fenn and decided to keep him. And I keep the light burning every night and I keep my log, and at 2 a.m. I watch the dark boat pass and I do not go to the rocks. But I think about it. I think about it every single night. Because there is a part of me, the part that has been alone out here for 11 months with nothing but the light and the water and the thing that passes in the dark, that wants to know. That wants to walk down to those rocks at 2 a.m. and call out across the water and ask it to stop. Just stop. Just once, and tell me what it is and where it goes and what it did with Aldous Fenn. And I think that wanting, that specific wanting, is the most frightening thing about this entire 11 months. Because I think that wanting is exactly how it starts.